Welcome to this episode of the Sports Detective Podcast Show. My name is James Williams, and today we are talking about the new look Seattle Seahawks, and I am joined by Clinton Bonner, who is a member of the Seahawkers podcast. And Clinton, I'm kind of looking at this Seahawks team. The defense has a lot of potential, but I'm looking at the offense. We have a new quarterback, Sam Darnold. Jackson Smith-Njigba steps up to the number one right receiver position. We got Cooper Kupp. We have a new offensive coordinator. I could see a lot of different outcomes for this team this year. I could see this being a team that could potentially be hosting a home playoff game in the NFC playoffs. I could also see this team, maybe if the Darnold fit doesn't go that well, if Kubiak doesn't mesh with the offense, that maybe the season can go off the rails a little bit. Am I crazy that could be a high variance team, or do you think this is still a team that, like the Pete Carroll teams and the other Mike McDonald teams, usually has a pretty high floor?
Well, first, thank you, James, for having me and welcoming myself with the Seahawkers pod to the show. Exciting offseason for sure, right? So, to get to the heart of your question there, man, I think it could be a pretty big delta because you said it. We don't know if we're going to get the Kevin O'Connell system, Sam Darnold, or if we're going to get the Carolina or the Jets version of Sam Darnold. Now, I also think with saying that before, like Seahawks fans throw tomatoes at me, man, it's like he went 14-3 last year. Yes, he was in a good system. Yes, of course, he had good support with JJ and Addison, Hawkinson, et cetera, et cetera. And look, they bring in Clint Kubiak. They also really do a couple of key things. They bolster the line. They actually invest in the line. They're bringing back a fullback. They've got capable tight ends. And then you got JSN, you got Cooper Kupp, and you have others that most people are not going to know quite yet that are capable wide receivers. And they're going to do things that, play to Darnold's strength, get him out in the pocket, get him booting, hitting the digs, taking the shots when you got to go vertical. When you want to go vertical, it's still there in the Kubiak system. With that, a lot of it is going to be predicated from a strong run game, which was the exact opposite of what we got last year with Ryan Grubb. We never ran the freaking ball, James.
So I want to talk a little bit more about the offense here. You brought up the fact that this is going to be a very much a run first team. This is going to be Clint Kubiak, the son of Gary Kubiak, who basically invented the modern zone rushing scheme. So we've seen that work out very well with like the Shanahan system over the years. And I'm looking at the Seahawks running back so far this year. Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet, two very, very fascinating players, two very exciting players. Kenneth Walker has been a guy that I've been infatuated since his time at Michigan State. But he has had a little bit of trouble staying on the field. He's had a few different foot issues. Is that something that has been a little bit worrisome for him this offseason, or is he going to hit the start of the season running?
It's a worry. And that's the honest answer. And because why? Because, well, the history is telling us that he does get dinged. When he's out there, he's remarkably special. And the last couple of years, they haven't been kind to K9 in the sense that they blocked really poorly, had some of the worst offensive lines. And then last year, the scheme was just an absolute disaster. And they had poor offensive line play. And yet you still see K9 create, 1, 2, 3, 4 yards from, where he should be losing -2 yards, getting hit in the backfield, and he's escaping. So going to the Kubiak system with the wide zone, in many ways, it can really play into what K9's good at, get him in a little bit of space and just let him use that raw athleticism that we saw at MSU and let him go do special things with a little bit of a hole. With that, he missed time throughout OTAs and preseason with the foot thing. And sitting in the background, you mentioned him as well, is kind of all reliable at this point. And now entering his third year is Zach Charbonnet, who he doesn't look quite as dynamic. It is what it is. The eye test will tell you that. However, when he's in the game, he's been really, really productive. And I also think wide zone, it's actually maybe even favors Charbonnet a bit more because he doesn't rely on sheer athleticism to go 100 miles an hour. He is a bit more patient and then could do the one-cut Arian Foster type thing, maybe even a bit better than K9. So different types of backs, really talented running back room. And then we, of course, have the best running back from Boise State the last couple of years, George Halani, which is nice.
One thing about this offense, though, is we can talk how great Clint Kubiak is. We can talk about how great the wide receivers are, the running backs, the tight ends, like you said. this offense is probably only going to go as far as Sam Darnold goes. He had an absolute breakout year last year for Minnesota. It looked like they were potentially going to be the 1 seed in the NFC. And then from week 18 on, they lose to the Lions, and they lose to the Rams in the playoff game. That was an absolute disaster. Probably cost Sam Darnold a significant amount of money. How is the vibe with the fan base right now, heading with him to be the quarterback? Now in place of Geno Smith in Seattle.
But it was very house divided when it first happened. You had a whole faction that really just just had grown tired and disliked Geno. And then you had people with eyeballs who realized that he was not the culprit. And it was when you're sitting in 3rd and 8s and 3rd and 7s, and you're still converting at a pretty high percentage because Geno is a really accurate passer and he's a really good progressor, that it wasn't really on him, not in my opinion at all. So I think there's a large faction that thinks there might be a bit of a talent downgrade potentially. And but again, there's a whole side of it that was just tired of Geno and it was welcoming the new. I was very happy with the way John Schneider weaved in and out of this, right? Because it could have went in a lot of different ways. To be able to trade Geno, get what they got from a return, trade DK, get a pretty high pick capital wise, get a good return, and then seamlessly just work into getting Sam Darnold. It's pretty good GMing, and to do so at a dollar amount that wasn't killing us, like you mentioned earlier. He's making like 30 something million, and it's really a 2-year contract. So after 2 years, you could really get out scot free if Darnold does not work out, or you could look to extend him. So I think most Seahawks fans, well, you can't cry over spilt milk for too long. Geno's gone, and good luck with the Raiders. I think most Seahawks fans saw that Kansas City game, game 2, where we ran, and now we're playing Kansas City's backups and such like that. It's fine, but it looked really crisp. And the drive that Darnold has, he's out on the edges, he's booting, he's hitting digs, he's hitting fullbacks in the flat that are wide open, schemed open. I think most are ready to be like, okay, we think Sam could do a pretty darn good job. And if that is a team in the NFC North with the Vikings that could go 14-3, all right, the ending wasn't beautiful, but to me, it doesn't discount everything that got them to 14 friggin' wins, including coming up to the PNW and having a 4th quarter comeback and beating Seattle on our home turf last year. So I think most are ready for it. And I think most are actually at this point quite excited.
Two things to add to that. Geno, when you look at like the production of this offense over the last few years with Geno, with not that good of an offensive line, or you could say a downright bad offensive line.
Say it, Jim. Bad.
It's just astonishing that the offense was still able to be so productive, and I think that's a credit to Geno Smith. To the Darnold point, pointed out he went 14-3. They were a game away from getting the 1 seed in the NFC, and they do that. Who knows what ends up happening with Minnesota last year. You can make the argument Darnold's season last year was better than any Kirk Cousins season that Kirk ever had in Minnesota. And, I'm not saying that, when you bring in a quarterback, the selling point should be, hey, he's going to be better than Kirk Cousins. I don't know that's something that's going to excite the fan base and sell a lot of jerseys, but that means he's definitely a very productive quarterback in the NFL at the very least. So I think Seattle here, like you said, low risk, high reward. If he turns out to be a bust, you can move off of him. The college games can be bringing in several first-round quarterbacks over the next few years, and Seattle would definitely be in shape to get one if this Darnold thing doesn't work out. But if he does, extend him and you keep the truck running. Can we talk about the defense a little bit? Because
Please.
Mike McDonald, the head coach, is a defensive head coach. And you've seen the defense, since he's taken over, get better than it was under Pete Carroll. I am looking at just kind of like the overall numbers of the defense last year. I thought it was better than it actually does look on paper. What do you think this defense has to do to really take the next step to be one of the better ones in the league?
Well, let me think about that for a second, because it was definitely a tale of two halves. With the numbers last year are going to obviously do what numbers do, right? They're going to just all mix up and spit out something. But if you really bifurcate it and look at what happened when McDonald didn't have a player like Ernest Jones, and what happens to the linebacker, and what happens after they make a wholesale change at linebacker and go get Ernest Jones, the team really turned around. Now it's not it's I don't think it's that cut and dry, but you also have the rest of everybody else having 7-8 weeks in a system that's brand new and on the more complicated side from a defensive scheme. And we're starting a rookie linebacker last year alongside Ernest Jones with Tyrese Knight once they made that change. Um, so I think it's, if you look at the second half of the year, you're much happier as a Seahawks fan and much more geared up for, okay, that's probably what we'll get from this time around from Jump Street. With that, there's still a couple of areas that I think most Seahawks fans would say we'd like to see a little bit stronger. And, one of them was this last couple of weeks, there was arguments over, should we go trade for Trey Hendrickson? Should we go get Micah Parsons? Because while you look at the front on the front seven, front four for Seattle, you kind of have good across the board. And I would say Leo Williams, he got great. He had 11 sacks last year. And for an interior guy to get 11 sacks, he also had a pick six last year. He had a phenomenal year. And you got Byron Murphy right next to him and Jaron Reed, a nice veteran. So really good kind of core, 3 technique, 1 technique guys, really, really solid. And then you get out to the edges, you got Boye Mafe, you got Derek Hall. You bring in DeMarcus Lawrence from the Cowboys, who, if healthy, is a heck of a run stuffer and still gives you a little juice in the pass rush. You're getting back Uchenna Nwosu. How healthy is Uchenna? We don't really know. But the thing that I think a lot of Seahawks fans would talk about still is, hey, we don't have a 12 sack guy. We don't, or, Leo had 11 last year in the interior. I wouldn't bet much money he sniffs over 8 this year just because of the variability in sacks, especially from the inside. You just can't. That's like interceptions in fantasy football. Like, you don't know, DBs fluctuate so much. So there's not the TJ Watt. There's not that dominant dude on the outside that's going to be peg him for 14 plus sacks and a game wrecker. So that's the area that I think most be like, it'd still be cool to take a leap there, but can it be Derek Hall? Can it be Boye Mafe? These are dudes that are still in their first contract who have been good. Can they take that leap to great? We'll see. The D-backs are awesome, man. This is a fun unit, right? So you look at Spoon, you look at Tariq, you look at Julian Love as kind of the captain back there. You got Kobe Bryant. And then they draft Eamon Wari. This is a fun, malleable safety group, and McDonald likes to deploy these guys in very various ways, and all the the fake blitzing and everything else that he does with all these different pieces out there. So we all expect, I think, as a Seahawks fan group, a real solid progression that leaps off of where they were last year. That's what we expect. But sometimes the NFL comes up and punches you in the mouth, and you turn around and you're 1-2 and you don't know what hit you. So we'll see what we get a couple of weeks in.
I want to ask you a few big picture questions about the Seahawks just in general. Not necessarily about this team, but I'll start off with this one. Russell Wilson is obviously the quarterback that won Seattle the Super Bowl, or at least was the quarterback on a Super Bowl team, obviously through the past to Malcolm Butler famously in the Patriots Super Bowl.
I don't remember that. I don't remember that at all.
I'm glad you blocked it out of your memory. We'll cut that. We'll cut that from the episode. But he's probably the best quarterback in Seattle history. But, his tenure in Seattle was kind of, dictated a lot of ways by his personality, some of the stuff off the field, some of the stuff, where he's maybe doesn't get along with some of his teammates the best, some of his off the field quirks. And then, even just how he wanted the offense to run too during his time at Seattle, where it's kind of like, hey, let Russ cook, but is actually letting Russ cook actually the right way to run the offense. And then he obviously leaves. Geno Smith comes in, is better than Russell Wilson was over his final few years in Seattle. Kind of how do Seattle view Russell Wilson? Do they view him like, hey, this guy is a franchise legend, or does he have a little bit like of a complicated legacy?
It's probably the latter for a good amount of people, but I could tell you how I view Russ. And for me, Russell he's going to be a Hall of Famer. He could retire right now and still be a Hall of Famer. His numbers are what they are, and people could go argue about that, but go look at his running and passing numbers. They're off the charts for basically a decade. And obviously, we beat the pants off the Denver Broncos 43-8. And yeah, of course, you're going to say, hey, it's mainly the LOB, or it's the LOB was the main reason. I guess that this is the same thing twice, but it wasn't like that. Russ, that's second year of Russ, and he was really, really, really good. And obviously an explosive player and the ability to get out of so much, so many things. Sometimes he'll put himself into those dangerous moments. And but when he was younger, he could kind of easily get out of them and then create explosives downfield. And also, Russ has huge moments right in Seattle, and that of course come with winning NFC championships. Of course, come with winning a Super Bowl, but also just like his moon ball, like his deep shots, his gorgeous passes to Lockett or Baldwin or Jermaine Curse or Golden Tate. So Russ's legacy, it may be a bit complicated. All the off the field stuff. I mean, like, look, like, whether or not I want to have a beer with that guy or if he would even have a beer with me, I don't care. That doesn't bug me whatsoever. All I could see that I see him publicly is the dude's a good husband who loves his family. Like that's what I could see publicly, right? Everything else, I have no access to Russell Wilson. Is he quirky? Sure. Does he look like a really good teammate that wherever he goes, younger players could at least learn from his work ethic and the way he goes about the game? I think also, sure. I mean, look at the way the Giants are talking about him. Now, again, they have a really tough schedule. Heine's on the plane, man. Just running plays with his headphones on. And, even though he basically had no thumb for a while, but yeah, man, he's a competitor. Russ, I mean, that's my quarterback, man. So I'm not going to talk any bad words about Russ, and things end. That's okay. I think when it's all said and done, his number gets retired. He makes the Hall of Fame. He gets celebrated. Time erases some of the things on the edges, and people remember the great, and he provided a lot of that.
I agree with you 100%. I definitely think just over time, people are going to forget about some of like the weird little quirky stuff. They may even forget how it ended with him getting traded, which ended up actually being a very good trade for Seattle.
Yes.
Oddly enough, but I do think he'll be remembered a lot more fondly, maybe 10, 15 years from now. And that Super Bowl that he was obviously the quarterback of with the Legion of Boom, and that team was a legendary team.
Yep.
It was a very legendary team. So I think we'll kind of wrap it up here. Do you want to tell us kind of what your predictions are for the Seahawks this year? Do you think they're going to be winning the division? Are they going to be a wild card team? Where do you have them?
Yeah, I'm a bit of a homer, but I do think talent-wise, we can. I think we should win the division. People want to anoint the Rams right away because, and credit where due, they had a nice playoff run. They played well in the playoffs, and they gave the Eagles a legit fight. So credit where due there. And Stafford absolutely could step up and play brilliant football. With that, we had the same record as the Rams last year. We lost the division on the 5th tiebreaker, and we lost to the Rams in overtime in a game where we could not convert a 3rd and 1 and a 4th and 1 consecutively, and they came down and scored. So, we're talking about game of inches, and I think we have a better roster. The Niners, I don't know what to think about that team, man. They seem old to me. They seem like they go in the wrong direction. We'll see how much Purdy can put on his shoulders. And I won't believe in the Cardinals until they're just quarterbacked by a different team. They're like going to be in perpetual mid zone, I think, for until Murray either gets better, which I don't think is happening in year 6 or 7, or they move on. So I think it's ours for the taking. One player I really want folks to know about before we do cut it, though, they had a tremendous draft class. So players to watch out for: Torrey Horton from CSU. He displaced, MVS, who just got signed by the 49ers. He's wide receiver 3 to start. He could have a real impact. But the one player that people are going to fall in love with right away, Seattle already has, is Robbie Oots, number 40, the fullback. He's a converted tight end from Alabama. And it's transformative when you put a 275-pounder out there who seeks collisions, seeks physicality. And we're going to run the ball with a lot of intent this year. So when folks are watching, being like, who the heck is 40? It's Oots, and he's going to kind of lead the way a lot. For folks that like old school football, you might fall in love with the Seahawks team, even if that's not your bag, but you might like how they play the game this year.
The division, this has been one of the harder divisions for me to try and figure out. So, like, it just feels like every time I look at the odds, they just change up like every other day, it feels like. And like right now, it's San Francisco is the favorite, plus 155, Rams plus 200, Arizona plus 390. That's different than the last time I looked. And then Seattle is plus 500. I don't get the love with Arizona. That's something I just have not understood at all.
Year after year, they keep on giving them these opportunities. And again, they were okay last year. They were okay. We handled them pretty easily in both games. With that, they were okay, and they made some. You go out and get Sweat. You go out and bring back Calais Campbell. Like, they brought in veterans that should just make the floor of that defense better. So credit where due there. Beyond that, though, I'm still not seeing some dynamic team that is gonna that I think will last in the NFL. And the way they go about what they do and what they try to accomplish on offense, it's okay. I think it's kind of middling. And I'm with you. I just don't see them getting over the hump. Strange things happen every single year in football. Maybe it's their year, but I would not bet on that.
Yeah, I think they'll be probably a pretty decent team until Call of Duty comes out, and then we know Kyler
It's
gets a little bit
time.
distracted. That's why he had that worked out into his contract. Clinton, this has been great. Do you want to tell us where everyone can follow you guys on social media and where they can find your podcast? And then we'll head out of here.
For sure, man. So if you're a Seahawks fan, or you just sometimes want to, just hit up some unique angles around what's happening in, let's say, the PNW and the NFC West, best place is probably the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Seahawkers podcast. Out on Twitter, X @Seahawkers pod. If you want to follow me individually, @Clinton Bond. Those are all good ways. But during the year, James, we put out like 4 or 5 shows that are really unique, kind of programmatic shows throughout the entire year. And we kind of pride ourselves that we think we do a kind of a different job than anybody else out there. Seattle has a lot of content creators and a lot of good ones, to be very, very frank. But check us out. We think you'll probably like it.
Absolutely. We'll make sure we have the link to your guys' show in the description. Again, thank you, Clinton. Thank you guys out there for watching. If you haven't done so already, make sure you hit like, hit subscribe, leave a comment with your prediction on the Seattle Seahawks football season, what you think the NFC West is going to shake out. Make sure you check out more videos on this podcast channel's page. And we'll talk to you next time. Thank you very much for watching.